Hey everyone, this time on Tim Talks Audio, what is sidechaining and how can we use it better? When we say sidechain, we're actually speaking of the detector circuit of a compressor, which is usually a copy circuit inside of a compressor. These days, with modern DAWs, most of the time when we speak of sidechaining, we're actually talking about an external source triggering that compressor. When we're talking about outboard compressors and plugins that model outboard compressors, we're talking about two different circuits inside those compressors. One is the detector or the sidechain circuit, and the other is the actual voltage controlling or line level amplifier circuit. The sidechain circuit tells the line amplifier circuit when to compress. This is known as peak limiting or peak compression. There's also RMS compression, which looks at the overall signal and compresses via the root mean square, RMS, or the average level. This is kind of how our ears listen. When we talk about sidechaining these days, we're actually talking about taking the detector circuit and instead of it being an exact copy of the signal going in, we actually change it to something else, and external source, and make that the trigger for the compression circuit. There's a few different uses for using an external sidechain trigger on your compressor, and let's dive into the DAW and take a look at some of them. Inside this session, I grabbed some music loops and some other little bits to show you different instances where you would use sidechain compression. The first one we're going to talk about is this one in blue called ducking. Ducking is taking your main signal and pushing it out of the way of a secondary signal. In this case, I've come up with a radio kind of sound where there's a music bed and a DJ or a voiceover that comes in, and you'll want the music to get out of the way of the host. You can still have it underneath, but you definitely want it out of the way so you increase intelligibility of the host. Without the sidechain compression on, it sounds like this. That was the latest and greatest from the hip-hop legend himself, but now let's take a listen to this up-and-comer who's got this brand new hit for you. You could tell when the music is going and the voiceover comes in, he's really buried underneath. Now, yes, you could change the levels and try and bring that fader up to put the voice on top of the music. But what you could do is just set up a sidechain compressor on the music bed, triggered by the vocal. And that's what I have here. Here's just the stock compressor from Presonus. And I have the sidechain engaged right here. The sidechain is being fed from my voiceover channel here on a send. So an exact copy of the voiceover is getting sent to the compressor. Let's engage this and take a listen to what it sounds like now. That was the latest and greatest from the hip-hop legend himself, but now let's take a listen to this up-and-comer who's got this brand new hit for you. Those are some relative extreme settings, but it shows you what's happening. When the voice comes in, it pushes the music underneath to bring out the intelligibility of that voiceover. What I've done is I've used a very long release to make it more natural, but there's a few radio stations in New York City, where I am, that have very fast settings, and you can hear it coming in and out. Let's go with something a little crazy like this and see what it sounds like. That was the latest and greatest from the hip-hop legend himself, but now let's take a listen to this up-and-comer who's got this brand new hit for you. Really extreme. There's a couple stations in New York City, and maybe around where you are, that do this. But this is what they're doing. It's sidechain compression on the music so that the radio host or voiceover or whatever it is gets on top of the music bed and gets more prominent. Next, let's talk about more of an EDM style pumping effect. That's what I have here in yellow. So what I have here is two parts of a drum loop and just this synth line here. When everything is played together without the sidechain compressor engaged on the synth, it sounds like this. Okay, so let's give that synth some life and movement and pump it out by engaging the compressor. Same thing. We have the stock compressor with the sidechain engaged. I've set my attack and release times to the song tempo to really have that pump in time with what's going on with the kick and snare. I have a very high ratio, and my threshold is low enough so that I have an exaggerated example for you guys, but you would do this for your song to get the sound that you want. Again, here it is without the compressor. And here it is again with the compressor in. Listen to the synth. That's what's getting pumped right now. When the kick hits, it's pushed out of the way, and then because of my release time, I have it set for a 16th note after the kick hits for it to come back up. You can hear it going wham, wham, wham. That's pumping. This is another use of a sidechain compressor and is very prominent in dance music these days. Now let's take a look at another effect you could do with sidechain compression. This one here that I have in pink called a dynamic delay. I've already made a video on how to create a dynamic delay and use it in your song, but we're going to go over it again because this video is about sidechaining, and that's what this is. A dynamic delay has a compressor after the delay, which pushes the delay signal down while a vocal or whatever you want to be dynamically delayed is on top. When that goes away, the delays come back in. Let me show you. Here I have my vocal channel, and here's the effect channel with the delay on it. Without the sidechain compressor on, it sounds like this. The mix between the vocal and the delay are kind of even. But if I want the delay out of the way when the vocal is happening, I put a sidechain compressor on. And the same thing like before. We're using our stock compressor, sidechain engaged, getting sent from our signal channel. When the vocal was happening, the delays were there, but they were pushed underneath the rest of the mix and the vocal. When the vocal stopped, it let the delays come back up in level and have more of a prominent role because there was nothing pushing them out of the way. And the last example is a de-esser. A de-esser does exactly what it says. It pulls the S's out of a vocal performance, or maybe you have a very bright or brittle hi-hat. You could use a de-esser on that. For this example, we're just using a voice, which I have here. I have an effects channel, which is getting an exact copy of the vocal from a send, going here. And on this effects channel, I just have one instance of the Pro EQ from Presonus. And you can see I'm rolling off all of my lows, all the way up to 2.5, roughly. And I'm rolling off the top ends down to about 7K. I've also hyped up the frequencies in this area around 4.5 or 5K to really bring that S and sibilance out. This then is not sending to my bus, but is actually being sent straight to the sidechain input of a compressor on the bus. This EQ here is just pulling some corrective things out that I wanted to do. Then this is the sidechain compressor. Let's take a listen to the voice without the sidechain compressor engaged. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore. It should sound really S-y. I made sure to kind of push the S's a little when I did this. But let's engage the compressor that has the sidechain in. And now take a listen.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
It's finding the top end and compressing based on that from my sidechain input. Let's do a quick before and after.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
You can hear it's really taming that top end. And I'm just using the Pro EQ to do this. But I could disengage the sidechain and use the internal sidechain and filter the sounds to create the same thing. You don't need to use a send if you have the Pro EQ, because now it's only listening to the top end.
She sells seashells by the seashore.
That's what the compressor is listening for, and that's what will trigger on the detector circuit or the sidechain.
She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore.
That's just a few ways to use sidechain compression in your favor. You can do all kinds of different things, and really the possibilities are up to you. Something to remember when we speak of sidechaining, it's usually from an external source, but a compressor on its own has an internal sidechain. That's the detector unit of the compressor. That's all for now. If you found this video informative, please like and share the video. If you have a question, please leave it in a comment and I'll answer it in a future video. Thanks for watching.